this college football playoff semifinal. Like, I'm sure there's a lot of eyeballs on that and, different ways that you watch games, but is there like a general consensus meeting after this NFL college football season is over to kind of reconvene and see what we can do right, what we can do wrong as athletic departments?
I'm sure there will be. I think, Ben, the reality is most of that conversation is happening amongst the P4 commissioners. And so, the SEC, the Big Ten kind of seem to be driving most of the narrative these days. And, at least from a competitive standpoint, it's hard to argue with that. I think the challenge that college athletics has always faced is, the NFL believes in parity. I'm not sure, Dibbs, you could respond better on the baseball side of it, but the NFL believes in parity. They think it's good for the sport, it's good for fans, and ultimately that's good for the financial aspect of what they're trying to accomplish. And so college athletics has never been in the parity. It's everyone's kind of out for themselves. And so I think it's going to be a really interesting conversation. I think while the seeding is obviously kind of not played out in the way that it was set up because none of the higher seeds have advanced, questions should be asked. Was it a detriment to have a week off? I'm not sure that you'll be able to answer that question, with enough data after this first year, but it certainly seemed to impact them because if you look in the previous years when there were 4 teams, the top 2 seeds didn't have byes. They just played, and the top 2 seeds seemed to always win. So I think there's going to be need for conversation, but you've already heard people talking about, should conference champions be given a bye? I think those are all worthy questions to be asking, and ultimately, who's making the decisions ultimately will depend on what those outcomes are.
Talking to David Benedict, the athletic director of University of Connecticut. No, listen, baseball loves parity, but they also have like 10 teams that spend the most money every year.
Dodgers, Yankees, if we can do that again, everyone would love it.
Oh, yeah. But I have a logistics question for you since there's some of these teams are playing like 4 extra games this year. Who's paying for their travel? Who's paying for their hotel rooms, things like that? Does that come out of the school or does that come out of the NCAA?
Well, actually, Dibbs, it's an interesting question, and I'm not sure most of the casual fans know this, but none of the postseason revenues associated with football, whether it just be the bowl games and or now the college football playoff, none of that runs through the NCAA. None, zero. And so that's one of the big kind of talking points relative to basketball coaches is all the basketball money that comes from the tournament does run through the NCAA. And that really funds the entire operation of Division I, Division II, Division III, everything, championships, staffing, the whole kit and caboodle, as they used to say. And so, the basketball coaches sit back and say, well, wait a second, the football revenue is outside of it, and somehow that gets directly siphoned back to the schools and the conferences, and yet the majority of the money, 75% of it, is coming off the top of the basketball tournament.
Wow.
And that's going to subsidize everything else.
I did not know that.
You're blowing Dibbs' mind. I love watching
my
the wheels turn.
Exploded.
Oh, this is
I had
great.
no
This is
idea.
great.
That's fantastic.
Hey, it's always good to learn, right?
Yeah. No,
This is
because
big...
you know me, I always ask like those nitty-gritty questions because I'm always like, someone's got to pay for
Dude,
that.
you're not the only one. I love going down this rabbit hole with people. I love
money
this.
Comes through, and
yep.
Trust me, the college football playoff is generating enough money that they are paying for the additional games and the operational costs of those things. Because, the typical bowl model is that, the bowl money outside of the CFP, there's a negotiated amount that comes to your conference. So if you're affiliated with a bowl, they're going to give your conference X amount of dollars. And then if you're representing your conference in that bowl, they then give you a certain amount of money that will cover not necessarily all of your travel and operational costs associated with the bowl game, but certainly a large part of it. They've gotten away from this whole idea that, oh, you got to sell so many tickets. They just pay you a certain amount of money, and that's ultimately what your conference gets. And then the conference dictates how much they spread that around. The college football playoff is different. They're not necessarily sending that money to the conference. They're just paying for the costs of that school to go play in the game.
We had a home game at Stores. It was dubbed the Rivalry of 44. Is that what Bob Joyce was trying to tell?
Route 44 rivalry.
I didn't know,
I've
know
lived
that.
Here most of my life. I've never heard that.
Providence came to Stores. The crowd was awesome. Comeback fashion. No Liam McNeely, but I love how the boys responded in the second half. What did you think of that game over the weekend on Sunday for the men?
Yeah, I think, it's, hey, our women are going to have to go through the same thing with, and have been going through some of the same things with injuries. And if we think back, to last year or even the year before, it seems like we've had one of these injuries, knock on wood, hopefully that's all we have. But, last year Klingon went down, I think after Seton Hall, which was our first conference game last year, where he twisted his ankle and was out for a little while. So look, it's going to require other kids to step up, and Hassan certainly stepped it up in the second half. Terrace Reed had an unbelievable second half, but we're going to need more consistency from other people to replace what Liam was giving us. And look, I still think we have a ton of upside for this team. I don't think we've come close to playing our best basketball on both ends of the court. I think we show flashes, but we've got a ton of talent out there, and they're still learning how to play together. But the crowd was great in the second half. We obviously, and I'm sure Coach alluded to this, we could have played better on the defensive end of the court the first half. But one of the things that I've noticed, that because of the type of offense that Coach, runs, it asks for a lot of movement, and we run a lot of sets that require people to really extend themselves defensively to be able to defend us. And there are certain teams, and I think Providence was one of them, that they get into the clutching, the grabbing, doing everything they can, which most of the time is fouling people, or at least in what I think is a foul, to restrict that movement, to stop us from executing offensively. And I think I was telling someone, if Alex Caravan was wearing a tearaway jersey, he wouldn't have been wearing it all game, because they just kept grabbing him to restrict his ability to move and come off screens. And so, it's something that we just got to continue to work through, but hopefully the officials will do a good job of not allowing teams to guard us that way, because I don't think that is the appropriate way to play.
And I'm sure you heard what Dan Hurley said, which is what we talk about with Jim Moore and the football, which the fans are an important part of winning. And, Dan Hurley was talking about there's going to be a lot of close Big East games, and we need the fans locked in for 40 minutes because it's a huge advantage. Again, Gampel is a great place for us to play, but I'm from here, and we're not like a Duke, North Carolina, and some of these other places where the people go mental. We're more like we sit on our hands and wait for something spectacular to happen. So is there any way to try to change the culture with kind of our older fan base and get these people louder at these games?
Yeah, Dibs, I wish there was a magic bullet on that. I think on campus it certainly stems from the students. Yeah. I think that's one of our challenges with being downtown, is you don't have the student attendance in the same numbers, and so it's harder for them to impact the game, especially in a much bigger building. But we've got to get the students going earlier, and to your point, we can't, as a fan base, wait for the team to necessarily drive and spark the environment. We need, as a fan base, to help our team sometimes spark, a run and bring energy to venue. And so we certainly saw that. If you were at the game, there was no doubt that the fans were kind of waiting for the team to do something versus trying to basically help the team do something. And so we've got to work on that and continue to ask our fan base to bring the energy, and especially our students, because they can really impact the environment in a way that not concert or music or videos. The students can bring an electricity that really nothing else can emulate.
Shout out Game Day Connor. We'll look into the legalities of electric shockers and seats, people over the certain age. Tearaway jersey is a great idea, too.
Yeah,
I think you should work on that. I think that's a great idea. Here's an idea I don't like. I don't know how you feel about it. I'm putting it on the shelf of Manford's Golden Bat for right now, but 5-year eligibility has been kicked around this week in other athletic departments and across the NCAA. What are your thoughts on that?
I think in under certain parameters, I think it's 100% the right thing to do. And so what are the parameters? The parameters would be no more waivers. And so the challenge is you got all these unique situations, whether it's an injury, whether it's, some other difficult situation that crops up, and you're asking all of these individuals to weigh these different waivers. And, as we've seen, it never, these things just don't hold up. And so I think we should get to the place where you have 5 years and that's it. Where right now you have 4 years of eligibility, but you can do it within 5. And Ben, take football, for example. Football, you can play in 4 games now and still be a red shirt.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's been that way.
And so it's like all of that stuff, whether it's waivers or whether it's you're monitoring, how many games an individual, that requires a tremendous amount of administrative work. If we get to a place where we say everyone's got 5 years, it will eliminate so much work and documentation, you wouldn't even believe it. And so it'll just make everything easier. And hey, look, for the kid that gets injured, it's like, hey, it's unfortunate that you got injured, but we're giving everyone an extra year. If you get to play all 5, great.
Right.
If you get to play in 4, hey, that's unfortunate. There are going to be some kids that graduate in 4 years and say, well, hey, I'm not going to come back and play an extra year when I'm just paying to go to school to have an extra season. And so I don't know that everyone would use it, but I think it's the right thing to do. It would make everything more streamlined, and I think it would eliminate this nonsense with waivers and all these other things that crop up that is very hard to administrate across the entire division. And so here it is. You get 5 years.